Hello everybody and welcome to the Petri Dish. We are once again here in Chicago at Veeam, and I am hanging out with Paul. And hanging out with us this time around is Jeff, and you might have actually seen him before because for some reason he came back.
This might be a first.
I did, yeah. I came back. Glad to see you guys again here at Veeam On. This is our fourth one. I guess, how many guys have you been to before this? Been all four?
I've been to three.
Three? Okay. Yeah. So you enjoyed Vegas, New Orleans, and now Chicago.
Yeah.
All right.
New Orleans last year was, I loved it.
Yeah, different place, especially if you're used to going to Vegas all the time.
Right. I think that's why it was so nice. To be honest, I really like Chicago. I'm just not a big Vegas fan, so yeah, anywhere else is good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys, did you see the keynotes around our new vision, our new hyper availability messaging, and all of that? Do you have questions about any of that? Or?
No, actually.
Well, he really turned the tables on us. Jeff, I'm sorry, that's not how this format works. We ask you the questions.
Well, I was asking you if you had a question so that I could then answer the question.
I don't know if you've ever been on such a...
Well, I think it's worth pointing out that you guys have had tremendous success in the small business market, kind of the smaller companies. And now you guys are going all in on the enterprise. You're trying to land those big clients. What is your strategy? How do you go about doing that? Because that's a whole different fish. You're not talking 5,000 customers. You're talking 50,000 end users.
Right.
So what's the challenges that you're facing there? What's your strategy? How are you guys going about that?
Sure. So, and while it is true that we're certainly going all in on the enterprise, we're not abandoning in our other segments.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, and this is one of the challenges I have in product marketing, is a constant sort of multi-segment challenge where if you say one thing that caters to the enterprise, you want to make sure that you're talking to all of those other customers as well. So when you think about the enterprise, of course, you know, much broader diversity in the environments that you're talking about. You know, historically, of course, we've been a virtual server backup vendor, right, over the years. And I would say now, for the first time really at the end of last year, we released a product that allowed for physical server backup at scale as well, with the release of backup and replication that we came out with then, as well as cloud-based servers and cloud-based backup servers as well. So all of that, you know, really allows us to cater to the enterprise much more so. So I mean, that was one of the challenges we were facing, was just really being able to cater to those environments more completely than we were able to before. Another aspect of that from a marketing standpoint is really just elevating the way that we are talking to those kinds of customers, so that rather than just talking to a particular customer about their, you know, VM backup issues and those kinds of things, talking to CIOs and others about the types of challenges they face, whether it's, you know, lots of data growth or, you know, being able to mine data for various aspects of their business, to things like, you know, they want the ability to accelerate innovation or improve their operational efficiencies and those kinds of things. And so when you combine what we've done with the product line to now the ability to have those kinds of conversation with some of the vision that you heard about this week, we feel we're much more armed to go after the enterprise now than we were before.
Interesting. And so marketing to the enterprise is a totally different can of worms than, say, marketing to a small business or even an end user or even a consumer. What have you learned about trying to attract these clients? I mean, I'd love to say you just go put out a flyer and then people just call you up and say, you know what, Veeam, I want 50,000 licenses. But what have you guys learned about how to actually approach that market? Because it's a very interesting piece to tackle.
Right. I mean, part of that ties to sort of what I was talking about around going from a speeds and feeds type of conversation to going to more of a business value conversation.
Yeah, solving problems, not here's a product.
Exactly. And part of it too, so there's two components of that. There's the going to the enterprise aspect of it, and then there's the aspect where, you know, you can talk tech even to an enterprise if it's like an early technology or they want to be an early adopter. So back in the earlier days when we were selling virtual server backup, back when virtualization was not as big a share as it is now of the data center, but you had early adopters out there, you know, those early adopter types would be interested in the tech. You could talk about that regardless of what segment they might be in.
Sure.
But now you're going to an area where it's become much more mainstream. And so when you're talking to an enterprise customer, you need to talk about, well, what sort of challenges are you facing? What sort of things do you want to be able to do? How do you accelerate innovation and bring new things to market more quickly? How do we make the, you know, the pain of whatever IT operational sorts of issues you're facing, those kinds of things. One of the things we talked about this week is our Veeam Data Labs capability.
Yes. Yep.
And really, you know, that's actually a technology that's been around since version 5 of our product. It was part of the virtual labs technology that we released then. But back then, we mostly talked about that in the context of backup and recovery types of challenges and scenarios, which worked then from a virtual server standpoint. Now we're actually talking about that in terms of all of the things you can do with that technology that are things, because essentially what you're doing there is spinning up a copy of a production environment and doing
so it's
things
like a test environment that you might run simultaneous.
You can
with
do dev test, DevOps, DevSecOps, all that kind of stuff. You know, improving operational efficiencies by being able to do testing upgrades and patches and those kinds of things. But that particular technology, almost in a microcosm, can capture how we talked before to our customers and how we talk now. Before it was about use this to do recovery verification or instant VM recovery. Now it's use this to accelerate innovation in the enterprise or improve operational efficiencies or reduce risk with these additional security capabilities. So even in that one piece of technology alone, you can see how we've
it's a different
changed our
conversation.
messaging and conversation from what we were doing then versus now.
Interesting. It's just kind of neat. I don't want to say watch you guys grow up, because you guys have been a big company for a while.
It is a maturation.
But it is. I mean, it's...
Yeah, I mean, certainly the number of customers have grown rapidly. I mean, we're about right around the 300,000 mark now, so we've certainly grown up from that standpoint from the earlier days. But in terms of moving from selling to earlier adopters in SMB mid-market to selling into a type of technology that's much more mature, but we're still staying on the cutting edge with cloud-based technologies and those kinds of things. Trying to catch that next wave now.
So do you think?
Been a really interesting ride.
Are we seeing that in kind of the way you're presenting the company and its products at the show during the keynote, for example, is kind of almost a vision keynote? Where we are, where we intend to be. Kind of a higher level thing rather than, here's 13 different updates to different products.
Sure, and we purposely wanted to take our vision and really bring that to market for this. And so when you think about, you certainly think about the hyper availability vision and those kinds of things and think about the enterprise. But what we also introduced as part of that is that 5 stages of intelligent data management life cycle, right? And the intention of that is not only to show enterprises how to go on this journey from, a manual, policy-based sorts of mechanisms to something more behavior-based, where you're doing things like potentially, having the system automatically detect malware and reacting to it. But it also inherently has the flexibility of, if you're a smaller customer, you might only be in this stage 1 backup where you don't necessarily need to. You're not going to. What I'll say about that is that you're not going to go to like an SMB and say, "Hey, we want to bring you behavior-based automated intelligent data management." When all they want to do is figure out how to successfully back up and recover a VM.
Right.
So it's meant to be flexible for all sites or sorts of customers, whatever stage or phase or maturity they might be in with respect to those kinds of systems.
They're not ready for orchestration. They don't need their system to come up in a different geography because of a disaster.
Right. So we want to be able to talk to them, but we also want to be able to talk to the types of organizations that are much more mature and further along and talk about our vision and how we want to be a trusted advisor and leading them to the way to where we see the industry and the IT environment in general going. And
so to latch onto that, what kind of trends are you seeing in the marketplace? So you obviously have a very nice view from the overhead of the marketing perspective. What are you seeing in the industry?
Yeah, so there's certainly, a couple ways to look at that. There's certainly the challenges that we talk about with respect to our vision around data growth and those kinds of things, and data becoming more critical. There's certainly a trend around earlier stages of AI, like pattern recognition and those kinds of things, that we are having those conversations as well. And that's where that later phases of that intelligent data management journey, that's where those connect with that. In terms of specific technologies, certainly you're seeing things in multi-cloud types of scenarios, the need for data protection across not only where we started, which was on-prem virtual server type of backups, but into various type of clouds, whether it's public cloud or SaaS-based systems and those kinds of things. It's where a company like N2WS that we acquired last year as well, one of the reasons we're keeping them, not just completely integrating within the Veeam universe wholly, is so that they can stay on the edge and talk to those customers and early adopters in that area. So certainly, the types of things that you're seeing out there elsewhere in terms of cloud adoption and in terms of the use of AI and pattern recognition, those kinds of things, to evolve data protection from the kind of mechanisms that we've seen historically to something that's more automated. The sheer amount of data and the challenges around that demand a type of system where you
Yeah.
you just can't do all that manually.
Right.
Yeah. I want to spin this a little bit, and hopefully you'll know where I'm headed here.
All right.
Office 365 from Microsoft has been a massive product, 130-ish million commercial subscribers. You guys are starting to play in that water.
Yep.
You're coming out with new versions. Can you just talk about how you guys have entered into that arena and you're backing up and how that's working out for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's been an interesting situation just because a couple things with that product that we've noticed with backup for Office 365. One is that a lot of times when you talk to a customer about, hey, are you interested in a backup product for your Office 365 email data?
Right.
They assume that it's already all taken care of by
Right,
Microsoft, and they
exactly.
don't need to do anything to deal with that. And so there's a little bit of an enlightenment there. That's evolving a little bit. We saw that more in the earlier days than we do now. The other aspect of that is that even if they are aware of that, and they might be aware that Microsoft is providing a certain amount of data protection for them, they're not necessarily getting the amount of retention that they need or
Right.
other things in order to meet compliance and other types of requirements they might have. So when you look at a product like that, a lot of it is about educating the market for data protection, but also being able to meet some of those other needs around retention as well.
Yeah, actually, it was in the press and analyst thing. I actually asked the same question, and you guys dove in really deep. And the question came up. It says, "What if 30 Mondays from now, after you deleted a document, you need it for compliance reasons?"
Right.
Right. Office 365 will dump it after 30 days. And
Yeah.
so there you go. You need that content, and X, Y, and Z employee left, and they just blew out their mailbox, and here you are.
Right, exactly. So it's that kind of thing. But I mean, that's definitely more of an educational scenario. I would say SaaS-based products in general are going to be a little bit more
Sure.
like that, just because people assume it's a SaaS product, it's already in the cloud, somebody's already taking care of that. They may be taking care of some parts of it,
Yep.
but they may not necessarily be taking care of everything you need for whether it's compliance or other regulatory sort of requirements or just your own organization's needs
Yeah.
in those areas.
And so one last question here, unless Paul, feel free to jump in with any more. What do you want our readers to know about Veeam?
Yeah, so I would say, with respect to what Veeam is coming out with this week, Veeam has historically, as I said earlier, been known as a virtual server backup company.
Yeah.
And really, what the message we're trying to deliver now, with the hyper availability message and the platform offering and all of that, is that it's a much broader, unified sort of solution than we've been able to offer in the past. So it's kind of like Veeam. It's not just for virtual server backup anymore, right? It's physical, it's cloud, it's across all of that, and we've got a broad vision that not only covers data protection scenarios across and broadly, like I mentioned there, but also across segments, as I mentioned earlier, from SMB to commercial up into the enterprise.
You got anything else, Paul?
No, actually that covered what I wanted to ask. I do want to ask about the party, but I understand you don't know too much about it.
Yeah, I'm not in the event planning part
Very
of this.
disappointing.
All I know is that they're usually really good, and
Yeah, no,
there's
that-
usually a
they're
lot of
very,
people there.
Very good. I think
So
pretty good is underselling. I mean, we go to a lot of industry events, we go to a lot of things, and we've
Yes.
both been sitting here saying, you know what,
The Veeam events, the party by far is the best.
yeah, the challenge with that is because we've had such a reputation for that. Is
Yeah,
that
like
we,
one up.
we have to live up to that
Yeah.
every year now. It's like,
why didn't Veeam make their quarterly earnings? It's because they blew it all on the party.
but no, it should be a good time, and I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. We very much appreciate you stopping by and wish you the best of luck. There's a couple days left. Veeam on, especially this will be up here in a little bit. And as always, everybody, thanks for tuning in for the Petri Dish, and we'll catch you right back here next time.